From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandra.
And I'm Hem Kaur Saroya, and on the show, Poland, Ireland, Norway and Spain, they've announced their decision to formally recognize a Palestinian state on the 28th of May, a move that has really irked Israel. While they reiterated that this move was not against Israel and the motive was to support peace, Israel, it's reacted angrily, saying that this decision could further fuel instability in the region. It has also recalled its ambassadors to Norway, Ireland and Spain. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority, of course, and Hamas have welcomed this move. What will be the implications of this? We'll discuss this on the show today.
Also on World DNA, the Pentagon claims that Russia launched a satellite last week. It says Russia launched the satellite into low Earth orbit that we assess is likely a counter-space weapon, quote-unquote, adding that it was on the same orbit as a US government satellite which was launched earlier. We will get you this story on what Russia is really doing in outer space. This and more, let's get you started with the headlines.
Poland says it backs two-state solution as West Asia crisis between Israel and Palestinians after Ireland, Spain and Norway announced that they would recognize Palestinian state.
Israel responds to move to recognize Palestinian state by withholding Gaza funds, move that could worsen prevailing economic crisis.
Families of 7 female Israeli soldiers captured by Hamas during October 7th attacks released graphic footage of their abduction.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
Rishi Sunak calls for early national election on the 4th of July. Tories widely expected to lose to opposition Labour Party after 14 years in power.
Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump. Having said that, I stand by.
Former presidential hopeful Nikki Haley ends months of silence, says will vote for Donald Trump in November's election.
Macron speaks to local officials in New Caledonia to turn the page on deadly riots triggered by contested electoral reform.
Drone footage reveals extent of damage caused by powerful tornado that ripped through Iowa's Greenfield town, killing several and destroying several homes.
Nvidia defies analyst expectations with record-breaking first quarter earnings. Overall revenue surges by 262%. Shares top $1,000 for the first time in extended trading. Israel has reacted sharply to the three European countries recognizing a Palestinian state.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a move amounting to a reward for terror. Soon after, Ireland, Norway and Spain announced that they would formally recognize the state of Palestine on the 28th of May. Israel said it's recalling its envoys to Dublin, Oslo and Madrid and summoned the three European ambassadors as well.
Minister Israel Katz said his country will not remain silent. Israel also declared that it will cut off transfer of funds to the Palestinian Authority.
The intention of several European countries to recognize a Palestinian state is a reward for terrorism. 80% of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria support the terrible massacre of October 7th. This evil cannot be given a state. This would be a terrorist state.
שמי שתומך במדינה פלסטינית תומך בזוועות שהחמאס עשה ב7 באוקטובר ותומך באיראן ותומך בכל הציר הרדיקלי שפועל נגד קיומה של מדינת ישראל. אנחנו לא נשתוק ולא נוותר נגד מי שפועל תחת ריבונות ישראל.
Meanwhile, Germany has said that the West Asia conflict needed a political solution and not the symbolic recognition of a Palestinian state.
In order to achieve a solution for this horrible situation which we have to experience at the moment, there is no symbolic recognition needed but a political solution. What's needed for a solution to the Middle East conflict and for the two-state solution are direct negotiations on both sides.
Furthermore, Poland said that it backed a two-state solution to the Middle East crisis between Israel and the Palestinians. Polish foreign minister said that the existence of two states would be a stable and long-term solution. Poland recognized an independent Palestinian state in 1988.
We will support the efforts of the High Representative of the European Union and other countries that believe that some long-term stable solution is needed. And we believe that such a stable long-term solution would be the existence of two states.
So far, 143 of the 193 members of the United Nations General Assembly have voted in favor of Palestine joining the United Nations. Meanwhile, the White House has opposed unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state after Ireland, Norway and Spain announced that they would establish relations but warned Israel against withholding funds in retaliation.
The entire world was rightfully outraged, but this outrage should be directed.
I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong on a strategic basis, because withholding funds destabilizes the West Bank. It undermines the search for security and prosperity for the Palestinian people, which is in Israel's interests.
Now, for more on this, we're being joined by Edward P. Joseph, a political analyst and a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Always a pleasure to have you.
Good to be with you.
Sir, of course, you've heard the decision. What do you think will be the impact of this? Do you reckon Israel is getting increasingly isolated at the global stage?
I think there's no question that Israel is isolated. Israel's been isolated for some time. But the question is, what will be the positive impact from the decision by Ireland, Norway, and Spain to recognize a Palestinian state? Will it actually lead to any positive outcome? I think that's the real question here. And of course, everyone knows, the United States knows, President Biden knows that the only solution is a two-state solution. And the question is how to get there. And this recognition by Spain, Norway, and Ireland, it's hard to see how that advances the actual cause of achieving its two-state solution and achieving both security for Israel and justice, dignity, and security as well for Palestinians. It's hard to see that, because if we look back, what is the obstacle to this? It's not that there's an obstacle only on one side. There's been an inability, despite intensive efforts led by the United States, that actually produced offers by Israel. The most recent one, and many people forget this, in 2008, by then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, who made a concrete and apparently quite plausible offer, and the current president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, rejected it. Back in 1999, Yasser Arafat failed to provide a counteroffer to the offer put on the table by then Prime Minister Ehud Barak. And that was brokered, of course, by President Bill Clinton. And third, of course, we have the historical rejection back of the UN partition plan in 1947. So it's clear that President Biden is right. The terms that have to be agreed by the two parties in order to achieve what everyone knows is the only durable, stable, and fair solution, which is a state for each of these two peoples, indigenous peoples, in the Middle East, in Palestine and Israel. Please.
Mr. Joseph, also wanted to get your thoughts on this. We've spoken about the pressure that is there on Israel. It is isolated. You agree to that as well. Do you feel these kind of decisions coming in from other Western nations put some pressure on the US also to agree or to get to that point of agreeing to a two-state solution at the earliest?
No, not really. I don't think so at all. We see that the Biden administration is engaged in an intensive diplomatic effort with Saudi Arabia, trying to produce an approach, a diplomatic solution to this terrible war in Gaza, of course, launched back on October 7th by Hamas. And it's Hamas, of course, that has cheered this news of this decision by Ireland, Norway, and Spain. And we should remember here, one other point that is critical for your viewers to know, is that at every juncture when there was progress towards peace, including, ironically, in Norway, the famous Oslo Accords between Israel and Palestine, it was Hamas that sabotaged those positive efforts moving towards peace with violence. And here we see violence launched by Hamas, and Hamas is the one also cheering this and claiming this, taking it on as a victory, even though Ireland, Norway, and Spain say, oh, it's not about that. So inevitably, those are the dynamics. And no, to answer your question, no, I don't believe that the United States perceives any particular pressure. The United States, President Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken are engaged diplomatically very intensively, trying to produce this breakthrough with Saudi Arabia and Israel that would lead to a dramatic, realistic perspective for a Palestinian state. Please.
Tensions still continue to escalate in the larger West Asian region, of course, with Israel and Hamas at the core of it. Here's hoping that there is peace at the earliest. Thank you so much for joining in. That was Edward Joseph joining us from Washington, D.C. Always a pleasure speaking with you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, we move further from here. An Israeli campaign group has released footage of 5 Israeli female soldiers being captured by Palestinian militants during the October 7th attack.
Right, the 3-minute clip, it shows the women sitting on the ground, some with blood on their faces, with their hands tied following their capture from the Nalos base in southern Israel. The footage was taken from a 2-hour video that was filmed on a body camera by Hamas militants during the attack. Campaign group The Hostage and Missing Families Forum said in a statement that the footage reveals the violent, humiliating and traumatizing treatment the girls endured on the day of their abduction. Towards the end of the clip, the women are seen being taken away by militants in a military jeep amid screams.
The captives' families hope the footage would increase pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to a truce with Hamas and secure the hostages' release. Meanwhile, families of Israeli hostages held by Hamas since October 7th last year held a protest in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, stepping up pressure on the government to reach a deal with Hamas. The protest was held outside Defense Ministry headquarters, where Israeli war cabinet ministers were meeting.
ואני לפני שתתחיל שהכוח שאתם
Meanwhile, it's the war in Ukraine that is now shifting gears. Russia has accused the United States of disinformation after the Pentagon revealed Moscow had launched a satellite that it believes is a weapon capable of inspecting and attacking other satellites.
In a briefing, Pentagon spokesperson said the US has assessed that Moscow deployed the satellite on the 16th of May.
Russia launched a satellite into low Earth orbit that we assess is likely a counter space weapon, presumably capable of attacking other satellites in low Earth orbit. Russia deployed this new counter space weapon into the same orbit as a U.S. government satellite.
The latest clash between Moscow and Washington comes as Russia kicked off its exercise to simulate the use of tactical nuclear weapons, including nuclear-capable Kinzhal and Iskander missiles. The drills are seen as likely signal to the West against deeper involvement in Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's ally, the UK, for the first time has accused China of sending lethal aid to Russia for use in its war. According to UK's Defence Minister Grant Shapps, US and British defence intelligence has evidence that China is providing or is preparing to provide Russia with lethal aid, although he did not provide any evidence to support his claim.
Let's shift our focus then to what's happening on the battlefield as well. In recent weeks, Russian forces have made their biggest territorial gains in Ukraine's east. They claim to have retaken Klishivka, one of a handful of villages on the eastern front that Ukraine took control of in their counter-offensive last summer.
With Russia making gains in the war, the Ukrainian army has come under intense pressure in the past 2 weeks, fighting off a new ground offensive in the Kharkiv region, further stretching their critically short supplies of soldiers and ammunition. Meanwhile, in a sign of compassion, according to reports in a deal brokered by Qatar, Russia has returned 6 children displaced by the conflict in Ukraine to their families. The children, a group of boys aged 6 to 17 that included 2 brothers, were reunited with their families at an event in the Qatari embassy in Moscow. Joe Biden faces a hurdle as he bids to retake the White House. The American president has received a warning about whether he will appear on the ballot in Ohio for the presidential election.
Absolutely. Ohio Secretary of State, in fact, sent a letter to the state Democratic Party warning that Biden may not make it to the ballot due to a conflict surrounding the timing of the Democratic National Convention. The warning comes as Ohio law requires presidential candidates to be officially nominated within 90 days before the general election. With the election slated for the 5th of November, the deadline to be on the Ohio ballot is the 7th of August. However, the DNC is scheduled for the 19th to the 22nd of August, more than a week after the cutoff.
Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump.
On the other hand, former Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley says that she plans to vote for Donald Trump, her former opponent and boss in the upcoming presidential election.
I will be voting for Trump. Having said that, I stand by what I said in my suspension speech. Trump would be smart to reach out to the millions of people who voted for me and continue to support me, and not assume that they're just going to be with him. And I genuinely hope he does that.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Listen to this.
Ohio lawmakers say that a legislative fix will likely not be resolved to get President Joe Biden on the ballot come November due to deadline issues. Current law requires certification 90 days before the elections, but the National Democratic Convention isn't until August 19th, and the Democrats will not officially certify Joe Biden before that. So the Ohio Secretary of State has written a letter to Ohio Democratic leaders stating that as it stands, Biden will not appear on the ballot because of the conflict in this law. However, the Biden campaign says that they are confident that Joe Biden will appear on the ballot in all 50 states, but they won't say how. Today, a moderately red state, Ohio, is expected to be less heavily contested in 2024 than several previous presidential elections. Major news organizations are predicting that the state will lean GOP. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Now, ending months of speculations, Rishi Sunak has announced the dates for the general elections. Sunak has announced July 4th as the polling date.
Well, the surprise move overturned expectations regarding autumn elections. Reports claim that Sunak's strategy could be a risky move, as Conservatives are running way behind Labour in the opinion polls. Despite hailing a decline in inflation and increasing defence spending, the Sunak government has failed to make a dent in the opposition party's lead.
Now, after this announcement, leader of Britain's opposition party, Labour Party, Keir Starmer, said that the national elections would give the country the opportunity to end the chaos of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservative government.
Got the pledges out there? And if they get another 5 years, they will feel entitled to carry on exactly as they are. Nothing will change. A vote for Labour is a vote for stability, economic and political. A politics that treads more lightly on all our lives. A vote to stop the chaos.
The leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, welcomed Prime Minister Sunak's calling of an early election, saying that he should have done it months ago. And John Swinney, the leader of the Scottish National Party, said that he was pleased with Sunak's decision, but that the decision was an act of disrespect, as Scotland would be having their school summer holidays at the time.
Meanwhile, Sunak launched his campaign in an East London exhibition centre. He told supporters and members of his cabinet that Britons faced a choice over their future, pointing to signs of an economic recovery in the UK. Sunak hailed falling inflation and an economic growth at its fastest pace in almost 3 years as evidence of his party's reputation as the natural party of the government.
The South American country, Ecuador, has declared a state of emergency in 7 of its 24 provinces.
Now, this announcement was made by Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa on Wednesday. This comes amid surge in gang violence and government's ongoing war on drug gangs. The states of Gaya, El Oro, Santa Elena, Manabi, Sucumbíos, Orellana and Los Rios provinces are, as well as one area of the Azuay province, have seen a recent increase in violence, according to a decree signed by Noboa.
Noboa in January declared that Ecuador was at war and also declared 22 criminal gangs as terrorist groups. The measure will allow for the deployment of soldiers in the street for a period of 60 days in the provinces that have been mentioned earlier. As per the decree, security forces will be able to enter homes and intercept correspondence in the targeted provinces without prior authorization.
To win in this second stage of the war, we need the military to be allowed to act. Let the criminals and terrorists who take refuge and mock the forces of order and justice in their right to the inviolability of the home know that they are going to lose it.
As gangsters set off car bombs, kidnapped police and murdered several people in response to Noboa's promised crackdown, the president declared the country to be in a state of internal armed conflict and ordered the army to neutralize the 22 groups. The government says violent deaths fell 28% in the first months of the year compared with the same period in 2023, though it recognized that other crimes like kidnappings and extortion did rise. And as always, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. On the other side, we bring you far more updates. This time from South Asia, India's northern state of Haryana goes to polls in the next phase of elections on the 25th of May. We track the voter sentiment and the issues likely to dominate voting patterns, from caste equations to farmer protests to the Agniveer scheme. Haryana will pose quite a few challenges for the incumbent. We'll get you the full report.
Also on the other side, another historic milestone was achieved as Kami Rita Sherpa ascended to the summit of Mount Everest on Wednesday for the record 30th time. All details on the other side. Stay tuned.
Economic turmoil and global unrest have cast a shadow over President Joe Biden's approval ratings.
The rockets are continuing to be fired by Hamas in Gaza, although at a slower rate than previously.
So, right now, we are with the volunteers from the Aleppo municipality. They are still trying to go to the rescue for the people they can find out.
India has emerged as a major diplomatic force at the world stage. The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injured have been moved. 61 people are confirmed dead and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
For WION, World is One.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
the biggest democratic exercise on the planet ever. Decoding the multiple colors of this multi-dimensional, multi-layered spectacle. WION deciphers the images and the hues, sifts real performance from rhetoric and noise, claims and counterclaims, populist pitches and hidden truths, untangling, unraveling this celebration of democracy.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Haim and me, Shivan. Let's get you started with the headlines we're tracking for you at this hour.
Poland says it backs two-state solution to West Asia crisis between Israel and Palestinians after Ireland, Spain and Norway announced that they would recognize Palestinian state.
Israel responds to move to recognize Palestinian state by withholding Gaza funds, a move that could worsen prevailing economic crisis. Comes as response to Spain, Norway and Ireland recognizing Palestinian statehood.
Families of 7 female Israeli soldiers captured by Hamas during the 7th of October attacks released graphic footage of their abduction.
Request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
Rishi Sunak calls for early national election on the 4th of July. Tories widely expected to lose to opposition Labour Party after 14 years in power.
Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump.
Former presidential hopeful Nikki Haley ends months of silence, says will vote for Donald Trump in November's election.
Macron speaks to local officials in New Caledonia to turn the page on deadly riots triggered by contested electoral reform.
Drone footage reveals extent of damage caused by passage of powerful tornado that ripped through Iowa's Greenfield town, killing several and destroying many homes.
Goldman Sachs raises alarm on the unsustainable US debt trajectory. The country's debt has soared 50% since pandemic. The debt to GDP ratio exceeds any point in US history within a decade. India's northern state of Haryana goes to polls in the next phase of elections on the 25th of May.
And of course, we're tracking voter sentiment and issues likely to dominate voting patterns, from caste equations to farmer protests to the Agniveer scheme. Haryana will pose quite a few challenges for the incumbent. Our special correspondent, Johan Castell, has more on this. Take a look.
Just two faces are now remaining in the India general election, and the political climate is heating up in the north. Apart from India's capital, New Delhi, its adjoining city, Gurugram, too, will be voting on the 25th of May. So, how's the political mood in the high-tech city?
We need to vote for the party which can create wealth, which can support actually the whole ecosystem with next wave of capitalization, where everybody feels that they are the part of the wealth creators, and they can share their wealth with the lower strata of the society as well. So that is what would be my choice.
I have the sneaky suspicion that we are moving towards personality-based politics and a very presidential kind of election. Yeah, we'd like to vote for the candidate for our constituency and not just a party and a figurehead. Yeah, they're very distant people.
In 2019, BJP swept all 10 seats in Haryana and is now toiling to repeat its previous performance. Let's take you now to the state's northern constituency of Ambala.
So we have reached the town of Ambala in Haryana. So we're going to find out what people have to say about the election coming up here. What do they think about the sitting party? Who do they think are going to win in this upcoming election? Let's find out what people in Ambala have to say.
BJP manifesto okay, that is no problem. For our country, it's the best party, ruling party, the only BJP.
For the next cycle, of course, who wins this election is going to sit for 5 years. What would you like to see happen? What do you wish would happen in the next 5 years?
We can definitely say if Modi ji comes, so definitely India will progress. In every sense, India will have all the thing and all the prosperity what Western countries are having.
In 2019, BJP swept all 10 seats and is now toiling to repeat its stellar previous performance. On the other hand, Congress is looking for revival with the help of its alliance with AAP, which is contesting from just one seat. That is of Kurukshetra. The election fever in Haryana won't stop here. The state will also be holding its legislative assembly election later this year. The June 4 results could signal which way the political wind is blowing in the state.
All right, moving on now, we look at how economics is used in geopolitics and the growing debate surrounding the United States and China's volatile relationship. Take a look.
There have been fresh discussions on the deglobalization of international commerce. This comes as a result of the latest round of the US-China bilateral trade conflict. Direct commerce between the United States and China has indeed decoupled, while trade between most other countries has increased. US President Joe Biden announced higher tariffs on Chinese imports worth $18 billion on May 14. These are to come into force between 2024 and 2026. The increase in tariffs follow a 4-year review. This study recommends that tariffs on Chinese products introduced on 6 July 2018 and 23 August 2018 should remain in place. The older tariffs range from 7.5% to 25% on Chinese imports worth some $370 billion. The tariff increases reflect America's priority for onshore strategic technologies and manufacturing. So the trade tension between the US and China will continue regardless of the results of the elections in November. The US is not alone in investigating unfair trade practices by China. The fear that Chinese electric vehicles could take market share from European producers has triggered an intense debate. It is no wonder that given these headlines and above all actions, the debate about the deglobalization of the world economy is on the rise. 2023 was not a pretty year for global trade in goods. Compared to the year before, trade in goods fell by 1.7%. But despite all the shifts and changes going on in countries intensifying national action plans, the facts do not tell a story of deglobalization. but of ever-changing supply chains. Between 2018 and 2022, global goods trade grew on average by 2.3%. And if 2023 is included, it rose by 1.7%. There's no doubt that trade in goods between the US and China has declined, but however, both countries have looked and managed the other sales markets. The report, WION World is One.
Nvidia reported a record-breaking first quarter for fiscal year 2025, shattering analyst expectations.
Right, and overall revenue surged by 262% year over year to $26 billion. And this growth was primarily driven by the booming data center segment, which raked in $22.6 billion. That's a 427% increase compared to the same period last year.
This surge is attributed to the high demand for Nvidia's AI-focused products used for training and running generative AI applications. On the profitability side, Nvidia's earnings per share mirrored the revenue trend, skyrocketing by 461% year over year to $6.12 per share.
Now, to further enhance shareholder value, Nvidia announced a 10-for-1 stock split effective the 7th of June 2024. This means that shareholders will receive 10 shares for every 1 share of the company they currently own. And this move aims to make individual shares more affordable and potentially increase investor participation as well. Additionally, Nvidia is raising its quarterly cash dividend by 150%. While Nvidia's data center business is experiencing explosive growth, its gaming segment, which was once its primary revenue driver, saw a decline. Revenue from gaming products reached $2.6 billion, reflecting an 18% increase year on year, but a significant drop compared to its peak performance. This shift highlights Nvidia's strategic decision to prioritize the high-growth AI market.
Despite the dip in gaming revenue, analysts remain bullish on Nvidia's future. They project the company's revenue to grow by 90% for the entire fiscal year 2025, reaching a projected total of $112 billion. The shares topped $1,000 for the first time in extended trading on Wednesday.
All right, time now to take a look at developments now from the world of technology. Credit card company MasterCard, it's integrating artificial intelligence into its fraud prediction technology. The aim is to use AI to be able to see patterns in stolen cards faster and allow banks to replace them before they are used by criminals. The New York-based company has said that the new update, they'll be able to use compromised credit card number information such as geography, time and address to get the cardholder sooner. And that's not all. The same pattern can also be used in reverse to detect potentially compromised merchants or payment processors.
The Bank of Italy has put out a warning against fake videos. They've warned that bad actors are using artificial intelligence technology to produce fake video messages. Cyber criminals are passing these fake video messages as legitimate messages from financial authorities and other institutions as well. The Bank of Italy has advised their customers to avoid sharing such messages with their friends and family. Moreover, they have asked customers to refrain from following any instructions mentioned in the deepfake video.
Tech giant Meta is teaming up with cryptocurrency companies like Coinbase, Kraken, Ripple Gemini and Match Group to fight online scams. The company behind popular dating apps like Tinder have teamed up with Meta to form a united front against scammers. The new online safety initiatives, it's called Tech Against Scams, and the aim is to detect and combat online scams over the last few years. There has been an alarming rise in online scams, specifically romance scam and pig butchering scam. According to Meta, online predators are using sophisticated tools to plan scams impacting thousands of people around the globe. The coalition will see companies share insights, best practices and threat intelligence to stay ahead of evolving scam techniques. They'll also collaborate on ways to educate and protect consumers against online scams.
Another historic milestone was achieved as Kami Rita Sherpa ascended to the summit of Mount Everest on Wednesday for the record 30th time.
Right, the Sherpa achieved this remarkable feat in just 7 days, breaking his own previous record. Kami Rita now has the highest number of ascents to Mount Everest. 54-year-old Kami Rita Sherpa climbed the peak of Mount Everest for the 30th time. This was on the 12th of May. He'd reached the summit on the tallest mountain, creating his own record for the 29th time. The last achievement meant that the Sherpa scaled the peak twice in just 10 days. Kami Rita first climbed Mount Everest in 1994, and since then he has scaled the peak almost every year. That puts him in the record books of the highest number of ascents.
The Sherpa's achievements are not just confined to scaling the Everest, but also extends to other seemingly inaccessible peaks like the K2. Notably, the climbing season has just begun on Mount Everest, and hundreds of climbers are expected to attempt the trek in the coming weeks. Nepali Sherpas usually serve as their guides owing to their endurance at high altitudes and extreme climates. However, the number of Sherpa guides are dwindling due to a lack of recognition from the government.
Now, back in 2023, after his 28th climb that was, Kami Rita in an exclusive interview with WION shared his thoughts about the situation as well. Listen to this.
After 2 to 3 years, there will be no Sherpas to guide the tourists to Everest. Only after that the government will realize the importance of Sherpas. The young generation, including the old generation, has started to leave work and move abroad. After COVID-19, people have begun to leave the mountaineering sector and start their own businesses. Now there are very less Sherpa climbers.
Sherpas are the backbone of Nepal's tourism sector. According to a Himalayan database, a mountaineering record-keeping body, nearly one-third of the 315 recorded deaths on Everest over the past 100 years have been Sherpa guides.